Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath, and in this video, we are going to talk about music. I've got at least a dozen music releases that I've picked up in the last month or two. Things I'm excited about that I want to talk to you guys about, including some box sets that are occupying a lot of my time. You know, I'm super passionate about music. I'm just as passionate about music as I am about movies or comics or video games or anything else that we talk about here. I'm a huge music fan, and yet I don't talk as much about music as I talk about those other things. Why is that? I think maybe because music feels personal. We connect with it on a cellular level, and it just it goes deep, you know. And so I have a hard time producing, you know. It's like, we're gonna talk about this, and then here's the points, you know, and then get in and get out. So I can tell you behind the scenes, this is gonna be a different kind of video. This is gonna be a longer video, and I'm just gonna geek out with you guys about the stuff that I'm excited about. And it's not gonna feel as produced as some of the other stuff that we do here on the channel does. It's really gonna be kind of raw because I don't know how else to do this. So with all that out of the way, let's just jump right into this. I've got a lot of stuff that I've picked up lately that is super cool. So I'm going to start with this. This is a box set collecting pretty much the entire discography of the Meters. The Meters are, if you haven't heard of them, they were an early funk / soul group from the latter part of the 60s through the 70s. And they are maybe more famous for their output as the band that so many early hip-hop artists sampled, you know, because a lot of their stuff doesn't have music. It's just grooves and rhythms, and you know these beats. Go listen to Sissy Strut. Go listen to Sophisticated Sissy, C-I-S-S-Y. These are, you know what, here's what I'll do. I'll tell you guys things you can go look up on YouTube or wherever you go listen to music, and you can see the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. You know these grooves, and you know these jams, even if you don't know the band itself. So this just came out, and it's basically a collection of everything they did. They're from New Orleans, which I think is really cool because there's not enough... it doesn't seem like there's enough soul music that is, you know, that for all the music, all the jazz and everything that comes out of New Orleans. I don't know if we associate it so much with funk and soul and that sort of thing. So this is going to give you kind of a peek through this box set. This is from, what label is this? Soul Music Records. Soul Music Records Classic. Soulmusic.com. I'm not familiar with that label, but anyway. By the way, let me hold this up for you guys so you can get a better look at it. These are the albums that are included. I think there's 8 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. And they start, it's so interesting because in their lifespan, they started as funk, soul, 60s groove, you know. The same southern sort of sound as like an Isaac Hayes. You get into that Memphis sort of a thing, and even there's a distinct sound, you know. And then they all the way through disco, you know, their end stuff ends up being kind of disco-y. So I think it's 6 discs. It's 8 albums spread across 6 discs. But one of the things that I love about it is that by the way, I've already talked about some of this stuff on Patreon because they always they know most of what comes in as soon as it comes in. Which is a reason to support, in addition to the hours of work that go into this video is probably going to be, if you see an hour video on the main channel, there's usually 8 hours behind it, between the editing and the uploading and the tagging and everything involved. It's usually an 8-hour process. So I'm trying to think, sometimes I feel like I've said some of this stuff before, but that's another incentive to support the creators that you love on Patreon, because there's a ton of work involved in this. I'm gonna be honest with you guys too. I'm feeling particularly beat down by YouTube right now. Just behind the scenes, if I seem a little bit subdued and a little bit less than I normally am, a little less enthusiastic, the hamster wheel of YouTube, man, it grinds you down. It really does, and I'm feeling it today. But I love the way they do this. You know, let's get back to some positivity. This is the first Meters LP. This is the label of the first side, the label of the second side, and then the back of the album itself, so you can kind of see what the album itself looked like, and then the back of it, they have the second album, same thing. So they go through the entire discography. And these guys have been broken up for over 40 years, but the music lives on through sampling of, you know, it's kind of a shame that they're more known for their, you know, the stuff they got sampled than they are for, I don't know, maybe that's just my generation. Maybe there's, you know, people who are in there, who were around in the 60s and the 70s, really love the meters, and they're like, oh man, that's good stuff. Hip-hop, no thank you, but I like the funky soul grooves. Tons of, so it comes with this booklet. This is a 40-page booklet, and it's just filled with the entire history of the band. Super detailed information. All the way through, you know, the recording of the albums, all the singles, everything. Look, I mean, it's just dense with text. So 40 pages of this. It smells good too, because that's important. So I've kind of been nerding out on this right now. Let me see if I can get this back in. Excuse me. One of the things that kind of irritates me about this, and I don't think it's anybody's fault necessarily, but this package with this like lift off top, because it doesn't, it's all one piece, is it does not stay closed. Now it will, you know, if you've got it wedged under, see if I can reverse it. No, that's no better. It will if you've got it wedged between, you know, a couple of other box sets, you know. But anyway, I wanted to shout this out to you guys. This was like $20-something, which if you think about the amount of music included in a box set like this for that price, it's kind of incredible. I'll tell you this, I've stopped buying a lot of my, well, I can't actually stand behind what I was about to say. I was going to say I've stopped buying a lot of my music on Amazon in favor of other places, but that's not technically true. I've stopped buying most of my box sets on Amazon because they're even in the best of times before the current circumstances with all the quarantine issues and stuff, even before that, Amazon was not good for having stuff on day one. It'd be like day 9 or sometimes like a month later. So I've been picking some of this stuff up from Deep Discount, which I think in the earlier days of Deep Discount, they had some issues behind the scenes. I know I had a couple of problems with some packages coming, just some horror stories. But the last couple of years, they really seem to have hit a new gear, and their box sets are... So that's what I'm saying. This was like, it was like $35 on Amazon, but it was like 20-something on Deep Discount, which is a great deal. So I've been buying a lot of box sets from Deep Discount, including, I believe I also got this from Deep Discount. This is something else I'm listening to. This is Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. My Southern might come out because sometimes I want to call these guys the Detroit Wheels. Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. That's my Southern coming out. But bear with me either way. This is a new box set from RPM Records out of the UK. Mitch Ryder was, I believe we can lump Mitch Ryder in, well, the Detroit Wheels at this time, with maybe the blue-eyed soul, white guys playing soul music, you know, white guys playing James Brown, stuff like that. That's what they were. And the big hits are Jenny Take a Ride, which is a part cut. Okay, so these are the ones of the YouTube. So for the other box set, I told you, like Sissy Strut, Sophisticated Sissy, stuff like that. Oh, also, you want to go check out, hold on a second, let me look at the track listing here. Go check out The Meters' The Look of Love. That's off their first album. It's a Burt Bacharach song that Dusty Springfield recorded, and I love that version. I love the Dusty version of The Look of Love. But now it's filtered through like Shaft. You know what I mean? It's got that like funky, hard electric guitar, but then also like the bongos. It's that very soul kind of a thing. Yeah, the musical equivalent of like soul cinema, you know, that sort of thing. That's what it's got. So when we get to Mitch Ryder, I'm going to recommend Jenny Take a Ride, of course, because that has CC Ryder. It's like half the song is a cover of CC Ryder, which you know about, right, from Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was a movie with Joe Namath, but it was a song. It was a really popular song, CC Ryder. And then it moves into... well, actually, it's reverse. It's the back half of the song is CC Ryder, isn't it? Anyway, it's Jenny Take a Ride / CC Ryder. Go listen to that one. What else do I want you guys to listen to? Shake a Tail Feather. Devil with a Blue Dress On. That's probably their biggest hit, if I had to guess. You know, Alice Cooper just put out an EP in the last 6 months or so, and it's called Breadcrumbs. And you know, I don't have that here because I wasn't planning on talking about it, but it's an LP. No, it's an EP. It's like 6 songs, I think. And he does it's him homaging Detroit music, and he does a version of Devil with a Blue Dress On. But man, nothing beats the original. So many times, it's hard to beat the original. Now I realize that what I said about The Look of Love may contradict that. I don't know, but when it comes to this period of music, I don't know, these original songs are so good. What else do I want you to go check out? That may be the standouts that I mean. There's lots and lots of other stuff. Here's the back, by the way, just so you can see what all this is. It's like 6 complete albums. It's basically, so the Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels were a mid to late 60s soul group, and they R&B, early rock and roll. You know, the line between those, between rock and roll, rhythm and blues, soul, it's so thin. And a lot of these bands kind of just walked back and forth in between them. The Rolling Stones, you know, they're the greatest rock and roll band of all time, right? But then they're also blues, it's straight up blues. Anyway, these guys came out of that scene, and by the end of the 60s, basically by the end of the 60s, the Detroit Wheels were no more, and Mitch Ryder had gone solo, and he was moving into lounge, and just very interesting stuff. This captures a moment in time, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 albums. Here's what's kind of cool. There was a greatest hits compilation called All Hits? All Mitch Ryder Hits, if you guys can see that. And the gimmick of that album was it was his greatest hits, right? But then there were 2 new songs. They got the 2 new songs on here. So you don't have to, there's no repeat of information, and you don't have to, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not killing a disc with stuff you already have elsewhere on these discs. So they give you the 2 new songs. And then on the third disc, it's a 3 disc set, they've got these 45s, these non-album tracks. Because if you're a music collector from the 60s and the 70s, the 50s as well, but primarily the 60s, there were always non-album tracks that got issued separately. You know, the Beatles would put out albums, but then they'd also have She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand, and those weren't on the album. Now in the US, that's a whole different thing, but in the UK, as those were originally pressed, you don't get the album tracks you don't get the non-album tracks on the album. They're singles, and the singles live on their own. They were 45s. So these are the collection of the 45s that did not get collected anywhere else. So these are the albums that are included. I'm a big fan of Mitch Ryder, and let me just show you guys the presentation here, because I think, you know, if you're into this stuff, you know, you watch this channel, you're into the movies that we talk about. This is the music equivalent of the movies that we talk about. That's what I'm saying. Like, so much of what I'm going to show you guys here is the music form of the kind of cinema that we love. The grindhouse and the urban and even the old studio stuff, you know, like that's what I'm into is kind of what I'm into just across the board. And so this is a really good reflection of that. So hopefully if you aren't familiar with the stuff I'm going to show you guys, you'll go check it out on YouTube and you'll see what I'm talking about. This one also comes with a stellar booklet, because you guys know I love a booklet, and I think it's important to celebrate the history of these bands and to educate. These box sets have a great opportunity to educate, because look, we're 50 years on from this now, right? This is stuff from, you know, oh my goodness, we're over 50 years. Oh man. This is stuff that the people who were there are starting to not be around anymore. You know what I'm saying? So there's an opportunity, there's a responsibility to preserve what happened, the story, the legacy, right? So box sets like this really do a good job of presenting the legacy. You got singles, you've got poster art, you've got promo art, in addition to all the text. So fantastic stuff. Also, you know, I got some vinyl here. This is not necessarily a vinyl video. We do vinyl hauls. So the last vinyl haul was a Patreon exclusive. There you go again. I'm not pushing Patreon on anybody, but for those of you who want stuff like that, I mean, we're putting up like hours of stuff every single month on Patreon, hours and hours. I have, this is my Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels vinyl. This is the only vinyl album that I have of Mitch Ryder, but it's their greatest hits, and it's got just about everything you would need. Every single song on this, I would highly recommend you check out. It's got Shake Your Tail Feather. It's got Jenny Take a Ride on it. It's Devil with a Blue Dress on here. Yep, song number 1. So, yeah, I'm into it. This is Mitch Ryder is awesome. He's my kind of guy. So, I'm going to pause to hydrate from my 32-ounce cup that came from the zoo and has flamingos on it. I love this cup because it's dishwasher safe and it holds a lot of liquid. I'll be right back. You may be asking, why is he not going to edit this out? Because these long videos, when you start editing all that stuff and having to find the things that have to be taken out, that's going to take my editing time from 7 hours or 8 hours, even higher up. So it's best just to warts and all. That's why I'm just like, it is what it is, right? This is a very different kind of video. If you've been paying attention to our Review-Palooza's movie, review stuff, you know that was a piece of fuzz floating. You know that I have recently fallen madly for Cyndi Lauper. It was the movie Vibes for that Mill Creek Entertainment put out on Blu-ray. And I was like, oh my goodness, this person who I've seen all my life, who I know all the hits from, there's so much there. So I set a goal for myself to really go down the Cyndi Lauper, down the Cyndi Lauper rabbit hole. And I picked up, it's interesting because a lot of her albums, some of her albums are not available anymore in the US. We're living in a very interesting time when CDs, as we know, CDs are kind of going out of print because the I'm having a hard time putting my thoughts into words. Digital, right? That's where it's at. Digital costs nothing. There's no overhead, but I want physical because I want to connect. I want that tangible physical connection. And it's also usually so much cheaper to buy the physical version. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but I did get my hands on this out of the UK. This is a box set with Cyndi Lauper's first 5 albums. Each one of them comes in a little mini LP replica, even though some of these were not LPs, they were just CDs. Of course, the standout here, the perfect album, if you believe in such a thing, is She's So Unusual. This is the one I would highly recommend. If you're not familiar with Cyndi Lauper, which I can't imagine any of you guys aren't, but I listen, I read the comments, I get messages from you guys, well, I didn't know who the Rolling Stones were until such and such. So I don't want to assume anything. Every video could be somebody's first exposure to something. So if you aren't familiar with Cyndi Lauper, you got to go check out Money Changes Everything. Girl, you know what? Look up this whole album. Just listen to the whole thing. It's probably on YouTube. Girls Just Want to Have Fun is, of course, the big hit, but it's arguably not very representative of what she could do and would do. There's a lot of post-punk in the early Cyndi Lauper stuff. When You Were Mine, it's a song written by Prince. Fantastic song. Time After Time, of course, that's a big hit as well. She Bop, which is wonderful. All Through the Night. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that, and then we'll go on here. This is her second album, and this is True Colors. This is really where I start to, as it stands now, where I start to kind of drift away, because it gets more and more into early the 90s stuff. I'm not at a point yet where I feel like I can listen to 90s music and not how do I want to say what I'm trying to say? 90s music for me has not aged well because I was there. I was part of the buying public in the 90s for music, and I don't feel like that music is I just don't think it's aged well, but it may just be because of where I'm at right now. Like, my sweet spot is 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And in most of my tastes, my preference ends at about 1993. After 1993, I'm just not that interested. But before 93, the further back you get from 93, the more that I can enjoy it. And so some of this stuff just gets really into like the heavy, danceable drum, automated drums, not real people on drums. She started out so post-punk. It was like this melding of perfect pop sensibilities with a classically beautiful voice and this real raw new wave sort of an attitude, this sneering, defiant attitude. And the further you get into that, the more some of that kind of starts to take a background and is replaced by just pop, just 90s pop. And I'm just not that interested in that. But listen, this was a great buy for me because, again, a digital album was like $9.99. I think this was like $15 or $18 or something like that. Anything that we want. Sometimes people talk to me about, this is maybe a little bit of a sidebar. I import a ton of stuff from other places, and right now importing is not great because there's so many closed. People aren't importing right now. There's some companies that aren't even sending outside of the country, so this is not a great time. But when all this is over and things kind of return a little bit more, listen, normal is subjective, it's objective, whatever, however you want to say that. When the things open back up again, you can grab this really cheap. Whatever is not here in America, it's weird because the United States, in many ways, seems to be the worst preservationist of the stuff, of our own art. Movies, music, our comics, what else do you want to lump into that? Our cartoons, so much of our books, that's a big one, our books. So much of our culture has gone out of print and yet is in print in many other parts of the world, in the UK, in Europe. It's very, especially in China and in Asia. It's very interesting because we seem to have the least, we're so consumerist minded and yet we preserve so little. So I'm not trying to make a statement about anything. It's just my observation. Usually, if I want something, I often end up importing it. Most of the stuff we're talking about here is imported. Actually, all three of the box sets we've talked about so far, the Meters, Mitch, Ryder, and Cyndi Lauper, none of those were domestic releases in the United States. And neither was this thing that I'm about to talk to you guys about. This is a box set of Sonny and Cher albums, another international release that we did not get in America, out of print in America. Flamingos. By the way, I have to give lip service to this. I also picked this up because I'm on my Cyndi kick. This is At Last. This is a 2003 release where she kind of tackles some classics, some stuff from the Great American Songbook. And if you don't think Cyndi Lauper can sing, or that she doesn't have talent, or that it's all just a gimmick, which I admit there's a lot of gimmick in the persona. I think behind the scenes, I think that Cyndi Lauper has patterned herself after Betty Boop. But I don't know that it's ever been said or acknowledged. I'm currently reading her autobiography right now. Betty Boop has not come up yet, but that's what I think. So sometimes when you get a glimpse behind that persona, behind the gimmick, if you will, it can be really revelatory. On that note, I've also got a couple of DVDs. I've got vinyl and CDs, and I got some DVDs to talk to you guys about too. I grabbed this Cyndi Lauper At Last. This is the live show version, the tour concert for this album. And it's that stuff, it's what I'm talking about, where she's doing, songs from the Great American Songbook like At Last and like some classy stuff, right? But she also does her hits, and they're through the filter of this band that she's got. It's a big band, like brass section and piano. I mean, it's a big band. And the thing is, she doesn't have a lot of live performances that have been captured on DVD. I can think of two. There's this one, and then there was one that was from the 80s, like peak period. I want to say 87, but I could be wrong. And that's not commercially available in the US either. It's part of a box set of singles that have come out of Japan. It's a 2-disc set. The first disc is all of the singles, like 30 singles or something like that. And the second disc is that 1980 whatever concert. But this comes out I don't know. I'm just really blown away by Cyndi Lauper. I think that she is legitimately a legend. And I never used to think that. I thought, yeah, she's good. I like that song. That's a good song. I like that song too. Yeah, no, Cyndi Lauper's cool. But I don't know, I'm like really locked in now. And it's because of that movie Vibes. Okay, so let's move on. If you've also been watching review paloozas and stuff like that, Kino Lorber sales hauls, that I picked up Good Times. Actually, this is the soundtrack for Good Times on vinyl. I got this from my record show. We have a record show that comes to my town. Well, it's not my town. It's north of my town, but it's a drive away. And twice a year, they come and do a record show. Vendors from all over the southeastern region. Actually, not even southeastern. People come from 5, 6, 7, 8 hours away to peddle their vinyl wares. And I'm not into, I'm not looking for, I want to first print, and go back to the Beatles, I want to first print 45 of I Want to Hold Your Hand. Like, I'm just not interested in that. If I can hear it, that's good enough for me. And I do prefer vinyl most of the time for stuff like this, just because that's how it was born, that's how it lived, that's how it's supposed to sound. But I'm not a snob against CDs either. And I know some of you guys may be watching this video and you'd be like, this guy buys CDs? Like, who buys CDs? Well, first, CDs are superior in sound quality to an MP3 download. Second, you own them forever and there's no DRM attached to that. Well, there have been at some points. Most of the time now, there's no DRM attached to it. And third, they're way cheaper for the physical artifact is way cheaper than the digital counterpart, and it's yours forever. It's like people are paying more to not see it, and I don't understand that. Yeah, there's the argument about clutter. That's fine. Listen, whatever works for you. I'm not trying to indoctrinate anybody or yeah, you do you, man. Whatever makes you happy. And honestly, I don't care what you do. Be happy. Be happy and don't give me a hard time. Don't break my balls about something that you don't agree with, because I just don't care. You do what you want to do. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing my CD stuff. I'm doing my vinyl for the classic stuff. Bottom line is I picked this up at my local record show for $3. Like, everything that I want. I go in with lists, right? Twice a year, I get there the day of the show when it first opens, when the doors open up to the general public. I got my list. I start hitting the $3 bins. 3 hours later, I walk out with dozens of records that are on my list. I'm telling you guys, this the last time I went. Let me circle back around. You guys know I was talking about Good Times, the Sonny and Cher movie that came out via Kino Lorber on Blu-ray. I had never seen it. I watched the movie. I was like, man, this is so much fun. This is like an encapsulation of 60s music, of culture, of the art, of the fashion. If you like the Monkees and stuff like that. Hey, there's a Mickey, I could not think of his name. Mickey Dolenz. There's a Mickey Dolenz cameo in Good Times. That vibe, that 60s subversive comedic kind of a thing. If you've seen Head, like it is the 60s thing, but it's also super subversive. I was really into it, so I was like, I gotta track down some Sonny and Cher, man, because like I know I Got You, Babe, but I don't know this other stuff. So I was able to find this album, I was able to find this album, and $3, and they look great. So it kind of launched me down this Sonny and Cher rabbit hole, and I am interested in solo Cher to a point, not throughout. There's a point where I jump. And I really think the more that I hone in on this stuff, I really think that point might be when Sonny and Cher parted production ways, because Sonny produced a lot of Cher, and he came out of, like I've said this so many times before. If I'm repeating myself, please forgive me. Patreon videos, past videos. Sonny came out of the Phil Spector wall of sound in the 60s. Phil Spector, before all the terrible stuff, he was the guy who had this vision of like a wall of sound, or it'd be like a wall of horns and then a guitar and then the drums that filled up an entire room with so much reverb. And then that inspired Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, who kind of went off with Pet Sounds and stuff like that. And I think that had an effect on Phil Spector. It's like there's this weird energy in the 60s. So Sonny Bono comes out of that. He was working for Phil Spector in that studio production environment. He sees Cher, they latch on to each other, as people in the 60s were known to do. Just like, hey man, you going my way? Let's go my way together. That sort of thing. And the music that comes out of that was really good. So I picked up, again, most of the Sonny and Cher albums, not available in the US, but this box set comes out of the UK. This is from the Beat Goes On label, BGO Records, which that in and of itself implies a Sonny and Cher connection, right? I don't know if they're affiliated with Sonny and Cher as far as like ownership or anything like that. Some of you guys probably do, especially if you're in the UK. But this label puts out a ton of stuff. Stephen Stills, Jerry Reed. I got my eye on some Jerry Reed compilations that have 4 Jerry Reed albums per package. A huge Jerry Reed fan. You guys know I've talked about Jerry Reed plenty of times here on the channel. Smokey and the Bandit, Snowman. But this is their first 3 albums. Not loving the packaging here. It's fairly nondescript. It looks kind of like something that got thrown together by an intern, perhaps. I don't know. It does not scream vintage or quality or anything. It looks very budget, which it was. I gotta be honest, I think this was $15, maybe $13 for 3 albums. But the cool thing about this is it has all these 3 albums. These are the first 3 Sonny and Cher records, including this one. Where is it? There it is, right there on the end. I just got paranoid I'm not recording. Could you imagine? Okay. I am. Oh, I'm very tired, you guys. YouTube grinding a man down. The thing that I love about this is that it has the 3 albums, but it also has, come on, open up. It has, as we've talked about, a very informative booklet that has essentially the entire history of Sonny and Cher as a recording act together. There's album production credits of who played what on what. And then we get into, look at this, we got a note. This is, so like the fronts of the LPs are preserved, the back of the LPs. There's a disc. On the disc, bonus tracks, A's and B's. That was a big thing for me, because in addition to having the music itself, the albums, I should say, they also have the A's and B's from that period. So when we go back to something like Good Times, there were some singles that came out of this. This was the soundtrack to the movie. And there were some songs that were only on the soundtrack that got a single release and weren't. And what we were just talking about, like about, things got 45 releases that didn't show up on albums. Well, those are collected here, the A's and the B's. Now, unfortunately, one of the songs that I love from Good Times is, oh, hold on. What's the name of this song? The Little Things. The Little Things. It's presented on this. I don't know what the source for this was, but it's presented on this collection, and it sounds really bad. It's not mixed properly for some reason, and it's like it was stereo, and they compiled the stereo, but like part of the stereo is almost non-existent. And it translates through, the stereo system that I've listened to it on, my car system, and headphones. It's present in the master, whatever they've done for that track. And it's really only that track that I've noticed it on. But it's like some of the stereo elements are just gone. They're just not there. So I'm going to move away from this, but I wanted to talk to you guys about this because it's really cool. I think that's the last box set that we're going to talk about. But these are all box sets that I've picked up really in the last 2 months probably. So let's see, where do we go? I want to talk to you guys about Al Kooper and Mike Bloomfield, because that's also my jam. As much as we've talked about some like 60s stuff and some bubblegum, we're going to move back to like rock and roll and soul and funk. So let's start with Super Session. Super Session is an album that was Al Kooper and Mike Bloomfield were they'd come out of the studio system, like session musicians. Al Kooper and Mike Bloomfield both played on Highway 61 Revisited from Bob Dylan. I think they're both on Like a Rolling Stone. I know Al Cooper's the guy on organ on Like a Rolling Stone. He tells that story in the No Direction Home documentary that Martin Scorsese directed. And then they all had separate bands going on at this time. Like they'd come out of this and they had bands going. And Al Kooper was a founding member of Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And Mike Bloomfield was a founding member of the Electric Flag. And I don't have Electric Flag to show you guys, but this is all kind of happening like I buy this, and then I buy this, and then it's just like dominoes, right? Because speaking of how cheap some of this stuff is, a lot of the CDs I'm about to show you guys were under $4. Under, like $3.74. And this is through Amazon, and they come with digital copies, so you get to immediately download it. Amazon's holding things right now that aren't considered essential, but you get the digital copy immediately. You slap it on your iPhone or wherever you want to put that, and then when the CD comes later, you can re-rip it or whatever you want to do. But less than $4 for a full album, and you get the digital copy, and then the digital versions of that. Like if you were looking at, here's the thing that I've noticed. Sorry for all the tangents, but this is what we do, right? And I'm telling you, I'm not super producing this video. I'm just talking to you guys. I've noticed on Amazon lately that the suggested, like, customers who bought this also bought this. Now those are all digital. And I don't know if that's, like, I was talking to producer Bree about it, and I was like, what do you think this is about? She said, well, it's either because of what's happening in the world right now, they're promoting digital because they can get that to you immediately. But also the profits, right? It's a business move, of course. And the digital albums are like $10 or more. And then the physical albums are under $4. So while you do have to wait a little bit, right? Like, why are they pushing? It's got to be for convenience, right? It's got to be, they're pushing for the convenience of you can have it right now, and they got to be pushing for the profitability that's in it for them. Because if they can sell a physical release for under $4, what does Amazon have in it as far as investment? A couple of bucks? Less? Probably less. Because you got to think, after they've packaged, after they've mailed, it's very interesting. But the point of this is, you can pick up, if you're a digital collector, listen, that's cool. Again, I don't care what you do. I really don't. If that makes you happy, then more power to you. Just be happy. Whatever it is that makes you happy, find it, do it, pursue it. But it continues to kind of amaze me that someone would pay $10 for something when they could have the actual, they could have Super Session. Now, I don't remember if this was $4. This actually, it might have been like $6. Everything that I've got here was very inexpensive, but you get, the physical manifestation. You can get the digital, or you can get the physical one that has these, extensive liner notes. I love it. My generation knows, my generation from the 70s, the 80s, guys going back to the 60s who I know watch this channel. The importance of listening to something with the album notes in your hand. You're reading the essays, you're reading the liner notes as you're listening to it, holding the artwork in your hands. I would rather be holding this in my hands, because when you're holding something like this, look at this. Is anything going to substitute for this as you're sitting there listening and you're reading? Oh my gosh, you guys, you're reading the liner notes by the director of the film, William Friedkin, director of The Exorcist and The French Connection, as he tells you about the soundtrack that you're listening to. Isn't that better? But again, I'm trying not to be judgmental, because be happy, just be happy. But it blows my mind, right? Like, it's got tons of stuff in here. It's got multiple liner notes. It's got a reproduction of the Rolling Stone article from 2001, when this was re-released. I haven't even told you what this is yet. Okay, so this is Super Session. So Al Kooper and Mike Bloomfield, who was also Mike Bloomfield, also in the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. I didn't tell you that. He's in the Butterfield Blues Band, or he was. In 1968, might have been 67 when the recording session happened, but that era, they go, let's just record ourselves. We're both session musicians. We both have a lot of talent and a lot of skill, and so they're like, let's just record ourselves and let's just see what happens. So they do a super session, and they just knock out songs that they like. The liner notes talk about how, like, the best music happens after midnight, when it's just people who love what they're doing and there's no pretenses and they're just playing for themselves. They're not playing for an audience or a concert. They're not playing for a producer. They're just playing for themselves. So they try to capture the sound of these two session musicians who were at really the peak of what they could do. And that's true, because like Mike Bloomfield was on his way down with heroin. He was one of those guys that burned bright. I think he was dead in 81. But he spent the better part of the 70s in a heroin haze. So this is kind of peak for these guys. And Mike Bloomfield, after the initial sessions, is a notorious insomniac. He splits. They're not finished, but he splits. And so Al Kooper's like, well, I need to figure out who else I can bring in, because I don't have enough for an album. So he brings in Stephen Stills from Buffalo Springfield at the time, soon to be Crosby, Stills, and Nash, before Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. And Stephen Stills kind of lays down the rest with his, they call it like his electric cowboy stuff, which is, I think that's what they call it, which is fair, right? It's that Laurel Canyon. It's not hippie music. It's not country. It's just, it's that sound, right? And And they put it all together, and they did a little overdub with some horns, and they called it Super Session. And that's what this is. And it's really fantastic takes on stuff. They got a Donovan song on here, Season of the Witch. It Takes a Lot to Laugh. It Takes a Train to Cry, which is Dylan, and which is interesting because those guys played with Dylan. It's fantastic stuff. And here's what I was going to tell you guys. So there's 3 of these. There are 3 collaborations between Al Kooper, who had a solo career of his own. After he was with Blood, Sweat, and Tears for the first album, and then he goes off. Creative differences. Blood, Sweat, and Tears immediately predates Super Session, by the way. So like this happened, then this happened. So they have 3 albums. The second collaboration I don't have on CD, but I do have on vinyl. So I thought I'd show you guys this. I got this from the last record collector show for $3. It's a double album. It sounds amazing. There's no scratches on here. It's clean. I've cleaned it as well. Clean your records, guys. Especially vintage. It's a whole separate conversation about collecting vintage vinyl versus collecting new vinyl. I say if you can, go vintage, because the pressings and the plants had they had quality standards that we still haven't seemed to have rediscovered yet. A lot of new vinyl has a lot of quality control issues. But this is the second album. This is a live performance at the Fillmore East, I believe it was. Recorded at Bill Graham's Fillmore Auditorium, San Francisco, September 26th, 27th, and 28th of 1968. So it's Al Kooper. It's Mike Bloomfield. By the way, this painting is by Norman Rockwell. Mr. Americana himself painted these 2 guys, these 2 burnout blues guys, on this album cover. The times were indeed a-changin'. This also has Carlos Santana on it and Elvin Bishop, and it's amazing. The standout track for this, I haven't been giving you standout tracks. Hold on a second. Let's backtrack. We did Cyndi Lauper. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, I want you to listen to Spinning Wheel. People know Spinning Wheel, right? Like, that's the biggest hit probably of all. Go listen to God Bless This Child, or God Bless the Child. That's the one I want you to listen to if you just listen to one song. Maybe also And When I Die. Listen to that one. Whole album's good. This is the greatest hits. I'm about to embark on a Blood, Sweat, and Tears rabbit hole as well, and I have to get that from the UK because most of the albums are not in print in the United States. Sonny and Cher, I want you guys to listen to We Know I've Got You, Babe. I want you to listen to It's the Little Things. I want you to listen to so many of these you know. Yeah, let's just we'll leave it at that. Listen to this. It's the Little Things. On Super Session, Season of the Witch, and man, these are all so good. Yeah, listen to It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Train to Cry, and Season of the Witch, which is 11 minutes long. So that'll keep you busy. And then for this album, I want you to listen to, there's just one that I want you to listen to, which is The Weight. The band song The Weight, Take a Load Off Annie, which when I was younger thought was Take a Load Off Fanny, but Take a Load Off Annie, take a load for free. Fair use, YouTube. I'm talking about the music itself. This is a work of criticism. Do not come at me, YouTube. So that's the one to listen to there. Listen to The Weight. It is stunning. I believe I actually did sometimes for serial@midnight.com, I do something called Midnight Music, where I just put up a song and I talk a little bit about it, why I like it, and then I link to it on YouTube via serial@midnight.com. And I'm fairly certain I have done as much for The Weight by Al Kooper and Mike Bloomfield. They had a third collaboration that did not go well and was vaulted for decades. That in the early 2000s, Al Kooper was able to pull back out, touch up. You know, I think there was a lot of distortion in the audio equipment, and like some playing was not up to snuff. Just, you know, we're talking about addicted guys, right? So some problems there, but they cleaned it up and they reissued it, or just issued it for the first time. This is the Fillmore East, The Lost Concert Tapes. These took place on December 13th and 14th of 1968. So that's going to be after this. 2 months out. Well, this is September. This is December. And it was the final live show that I think these guys did together. And a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the same songs, but different versions, different takes, different, there's different performances. And Mike Bloomfield, as a rock / blues guitarist, was just stunning, just absolutely stunning. So if you haven't heard it, definitely check it out. You're gonna be like, what? They do an Elvis cover on here too. That's All Right Mama. I like that one as well. Let's see, where do I want to go? So I'm getting into ELO. Now I know ELO from the hits, I know all the hits of ELO, but I don't know the album, I don't have an association with the albums. I only have an association with the greatest hits from the radio and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go do the work. And that's kind of how I equate it, because it is work. And we're going to talk more about this in a second, because I'm doing the work on another band as well. But it's not always fun to latch onto some of these guys and just listen to everything. But I feel like for a guy like me, clearly there's an OCD element there. There's a compulsion, and there's also I'm driven by myself to be as literate in certain things as I can, and you see that in our movie conversations as well. Cause I like old movies too. I love horror movies, and I love sci-fi, and I love no budget stuff. But I also want to be extremely literate in 30s movies and 40s movies, because I feel like the more that I know, the more it all means, the more you watch, the more you realize you don't know. And, if you think Shawshank Redemption is the best movie ever made, one, I'm happy that you think that. Two, you need to watch a lot more movies, because how could you say that? That always blows my mind. Anytime a company does the top 100 movies of all time, it's either Citizen Kane or it's the Shawshank Redemption. And I'm like, no, how could you say either one of those are the best movie of all time? Have you seen so-and-so from, have you seen Out of the Past? Have you seen Casablanca? The more you know, right? The more you know, do. Out of that comes my yearning to know the works of these bands that I love. So it's not always fun. Sometimes it is homework. And look, if it's work to listen to the music that a band made, that they went into a studio and paid money and sweat over and bled over, if that's work, then Lord help us all, because we are blessed. But it can be less fun to do the deep dives on some of these bands. But now is the time, because I'm telling you guys, these albums, this particular album right here, $3.74 on Amazon, came with the digital copy. These have bonus tracks. These are remastered. So this is the first ELO album. I don't know if I have a recommendation for you. Mr. Radio's good. I like that one a little bit. 10538 Overture. I think that's how you say it. Yeah. None of these are like, oh, this song. This is like Al Pacino. Oh, this song. You gotta listen to Manhattan Rumble. Oh, yeah. No, I can't really say that about any of these. I know that the co-founder of ELO with Jeff Lynne left the band shortly after this. Went and created a band called Wizard, where Roy Wood. We're not going to get into that here. Maybe down the road. Maybe at some point I'll do an ELO spotlight. But on this note, so that's the first album. That's as far as I've gotten with them. But I am winded. But they are a band that I'm going to be doing the work on, because all their albums, I'm telling you guys, there's a ton of these albums on Amazon right now for under $4. Never in the history, I say this with physical media stuff, I say this about our movie stuff, never in the history of what we do, consumerism, art appreciation, music appreciation, movie appreciation, have we had it as good as we have it now, where you can get remastered CDs of these bands with bonus tracks from the cutting room floor. You can get extensive liner notes about the history of these bands, and they're under $4. I remember when CDs were $19 new, and when they started to show up at places like Walmart or Target for like $13, you're like, oh, we're living in the best age ever. And then when budget stuff came around and you'd find these albums for like $7.88, you're like, well, this is as good as it gets. Now we're down to $3.74 for some of this stuff. Will it go lower? I don't know how it could go much lower and still put any money in the pockets of the label or the band themselves. That seems like that's all just production cost at this point, but I don't know. Get it while you can. That's what I'll say, because we are moving into a digital world, and if you're interested in owning this stuff, get it while you can. Finally, on the ELO, I've still got more stuff I want to talk to you guys about. How are we doing on time? Oh, I'm going to try to wrap up in 10 minutes. Make this a 1-hour video. I would like to talk about this. This is an ELO Blu-ray. It's a standard definition Blu-ray, which I think freaks some people out. They're like, what? For some of this stuff, standard definition is all that exists. This is taken from film, but what I would recommend this to you for, so this is the main attraction, as it were, like the thing that's written on the bottom here, is that this is the Out of the Blue performance live at Wembley 1978. But it also has, let me show you the back of it really quick. It has all these bonus shows, full shows. Some of these are taken from television. You know, the Rock Palast from Germany, I believe. Brunel University, 1973. Rock Palast, 1974. Fusion, 1976, and Discovery from 1979. All of those shows are presented in their entirety here. This is 4 hours of music from Electric Light Orchestra. And of all of these shows, I think this one is the worst one. It sounds thin. The audience is overwhelming the band. They just don't quite sound polished. It sounds kind of raggedy. Hot take. I'm not trying to be controversial, but I love the other shows. I love the earlier the ELO, the better too. I should say that. That's been my experience with this band. Though I love stuff from later in the ELO oeuvre. The younger a band is, the more hungry they are, the more raw the energy is. It's a hunger, right? And the older you get, this is what Quentin Tarantino says about directors. Like, he wants to stop at 10 movies, which we know he won't do, because a creator does not stop creating. But he says, you know, he doesn't want to be the guy that stays too long. Your earlier stuff is usually your best stuff, but that doesn't mean you stop. And I do think that's kind of true for this. I do find the earlier stuff to be my favorite so far, but I'll continue to do work on this, and we'll meet back here in like 6 months, and I'll talk to you guys about the whole ELO light bulb, the whole shebang. Guys, I'm into Boz Scaggs now. This is like a bolt out of the blue. I'm into Boz Scaggs. Seems like something I would be into, right? This has been called yacht rock. It's been called soul music. It's been called rock and roll. It kind of defies all. It defies is what it does. It defies all genres. And this is my first Boz Scaggs album. The next time I go to the record show, which is going to be around August, I will have a list, and Bob Saget will be on that list. I'm going to be looking for all the Boz Scaggs albums, because I see them, but I wasn't there. I was not there for that. But I was just, you know what? I heard Lowdown on the radio. That's what happened. I heard Lowdown on the radio while I was waiting for my lunch to be delivered at Chick-fil-A. There's some specifics for you. And I heard Lowdown on the radio, and I Shazammed it. I was like, this is fantastic. So I Shazammed it to see what it was. And it was the second time I Shazammed it. It was like, it's also here. It's like, oh, I need this song. So I was looking, like, well, where can I get this? I think this is another one that was like $3.75. Might have been more. Might have been upwards of $5. But it was budget for sure. I was like, well, I could get a greatest hits album for $5, or this greatest hits album is $11, or I could get the album that everybody says is his best album for $3.75. So that's what I did. I got this album. It's got bonus tracks on it, and I am super into this. It's in my crossroads, right? It's that crossroads of rhythm and blues and a little bit of that early disco sound, if we're allowed to say that. And it's a bad word for some people, but that it's got some synthesizer stuff in there, but it's also got that like swagger, that rock and roll swagger, because he came out of rock and roll. Late 60s, Boz Scaggs is doing rock and roll, then he moves into this more rhythm and blues thing. Then by the time of this, he has put it all together in a melange of just a totally unique sound, and I respect that a lot. That's kind of what I want to do. I want to take all these influences, my Shaft influences and my disco influences and my Cyndi Lauper influences, put it all in this thing, and then it just comes out Heath. And you're like, well, I don't know what it is, but it's Heath. It's Serial at Midnight. It's got this tone. It's got this tone. Oh, this guy, Serial at Midnight, that is great. My voice is too fried to do walking. I'm sad. Oh, your father wanted you to have this album. He kept it for years. I can't do it. Can't do the break. I'm gonna breeze through this one really quick. I got the Fifth Dimension. What is this called? This is the Ultimate Fifth Dimension. Band I've known about for years, of course. This is my jam, like 60s music, but I didn't own any of it. So for like $6, I got the Ultimate, which has 21 greatest hits. And now I'm just walking around singing Up, Up, and Away, much to the amusement of producer Bree. She's like, again? There we go again. Fair use, YouTube. I'm criticizing the music. It's a work of criticism. We're talking about the earworm infestation that is the Fifth Dimension. On such tracks as Let the Sun Shine In, the Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In, Jam. This is the day and age we live in where you have to cover your tracks so thoroughly or someone comes at you and like, hey, YouTube guy, shut it down. If you don't shut it down, we want some money. No one's done that. I'm trying my best to cover my tracks because I see other channels and they'll be like, you know, one of the things that I liked about so-and-so, and then they show like a 3-second clip of a movie or a show that they're talking about, that they're criticizing, and it'll say like, courtesy of so-and-so. And then like that video gets taken down and they're like, yeah, they told us we didn't take it down, we're going to get sued. So you got to be very careful, man. It's the modern world. It's the modern world, baby. This is the end. This is where we're going to wrap it up. Trying to hit an hour. We're going to go a little bit over, but as I'm doing the work with ELO, I am also doing the work with Jefferson Airplane because I love this kind of music. I'm a big, look, Mitch, Ryder, all this stuff. You guys know how I do, but I don't know Jefferson Airplane outside of the hits. Outside, I really, if I'm being honest, I know White Rabbit and I know Somebody to Love. And so do I do the cable guy thing where he's like, bleh, somebody let YouTube's gonna come at me again. So I was like, you know what? Now is the time. Now is the time to do the work. So all these albums are. This is not everything. This is where I'm at right now. 1, 2, 3. I got 5 albums. So I started with the first one. Let's do this because these are groovy, man. These are really cool packaging. These are really cool packaging, man. We'll just do this. So this is their first album. Look at that. That's hot, right? Extensive liner notes in the back of the original LP. I say extensive liner notes. Let me just show them to you real quick. If you'll bear with me for just a few more minutes. If you're a speed reader, you're already done. So it just tells you the history of the band. Interestingly, Grace Slick, who is the vocalist on the 2 songs that I just mentioned, she's not the singer here. This is the singer. I don't know if she's going to show up. It's very small. She was the singer, and she had in her contract that she could walk away when she wanted to, and that'd be fine. And she had a baby, and she did. She walked away. And Grace Slick, who was inspired by Jefferson Airplane, she had her own band at the time. The society, the what society? You guys, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, that's not important. Chasing too many rabbits. She joined Jefferson Airplane, and the rest was history. And then so Surrealistic Pillow was the second album. This is the one, man. This is the one with Somebody to Love. This is the one with White Rabbit on it. How about that? That's cool art too, right? Again, under $4, $7. This was because this is the big one. This is the hit. This is the one that everybody had in the 60s. This is the one that I think got them their gig as headliners at Woodstock almost before the end of the performance, the end of the event. Then After Bathing at Baxter's, this was another one that was under $4. So again, this is the time. You want to do the work on these bands. You're never going to be able to do it any cheaper. So this is their third album. This is the one where they just don't care. They've achieved. It's interesting, right? And I respect this like crazy. They achieved commercial success with Surrealistic Pillow. And then they're like, let's make something that's not commercial at all. Let's make it for us. If they don't like it, screw them. Who cares? I respect that, man. I really do. Because you got to satisfy yourself as an artist, right? You got to walk that line between giving it away to people who want it and satisfying yourself. And I think that they did not satisfy anybody with that. Maybe they satisfied themselves, but it was not a commercial success. But this one was. This was kind of a return to success. This is Crown of Creation. And let me show you the cover. Crown of Creation. And that's what this CD looks like. And then I have one more. There's a live one in here as well that I don't have yet, but I'm going to get it. And then Volunteers is the last one that I have. This is the one that kind of closes out the 60s, if I remember correctly. I think this is a 1969 album. And then, of course, after this, everything changed because when the 60s were over, everything was different. But check that out. It's fantastic, right? Don't you want to go watch Easy Rider right now? Hop on your motorcycle and just hit the road. Just put on some Jefferson Airplane and some Birds and some... Just take off, man. With Jack Nicholson and Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper. Crazy Dennis Hopper. So this represents... Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, about $20. About $20. 5 Jefferson Airplane albums for about $20. And I'll be listening to this stuff for the rest of my life, probably. So it's a good investment. It's a good time to be grabbing this stuff. Guys, that is... What is this? Is this Music-Palooza? Maybe it is. Maybe it's Music-Palooza. It's maybe not quite as focused or as easily consumable as Movie-Palooza. I'm not sure. Or Review-Palooza. I should have called Review-Palooza Movie-Palooza. That's what I should have. Is it too late to change it? I can change the title. I can't change the thumbnail. And is it too late? Have I branded it enough already with Review-Palooza? Because we could just keep going with this Music-Paloozas and Movie-Paloozas and Book-Palooza and Comic-Palooza. We could do all of these things. I don't know. That's where I'm at with music right now. Of course, there's so much more. I'm listening to other things as well. But this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about. This is the stuff that I've picked up lately that I'm just like really on fire about. These box sets. I'm telling you guys, this is a great time for music box sets like this. Now this one is not new, nor is Cyndi Lauper a new box set, but both of these are the last 2 months as I'm recording this video. These are 2020 releases. So if you're interested, go check them out. I would probably go with deep discount if you're in the US. If you're in the UK, you probably have a much cheaper source than I do. So that's I've got more. I've actually got more coming. I've got another box set on pre-order that should be arriving. It's shipped already. It has shipped, and it should be arriving any day now. Maybe keep your eyes on Instagram or our social media for something like that. I'm sure it'll pop up. And of course, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you'll know about it before anybody else because we do our Collecting at Midnight series. That's what all this is. This, as soon as it comes in the door, Collecting at Midnight is our look at like, well, here's what came in. This is why we bought it and what we think about it. And then it shows up later in Review-Paloozas. So some of this stuff gets covered 2 and 3 times. But that's going to do it, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us and talking about all this music. As you can tell, I'm significantly more hoarse than I was when I started this video, but we did it. Honestly, I started this video like 5 times, and I just could not get it going because I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know what I wanted to say, and again, music is so personal. So we did it. I feel accomplished. I will sleep well tonight. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Take care. And until next time, I will catch you. When will I catch you? I will catch you later. I'm flaming out, burning out. It's like, and I'll catch you. When will I? Later. Guys, thanks. Bye.